and welcome back to Common Thread. I am Jordan and today I'm going to be teaching you how to make a simple scrunchie. This is a super easy technique. You don't need any special equipment or skills, and in the end you will have 1 or 2 or 17 amazing scrunchies. Common Thread is a lifestyle channel with a focus on building an ethical wardrobe through thrifting and sewing your own pieces. I also include small brands that I love that have ethical practices. So if that seems like something that interests you, I invite you to hit that subscribe button and join me on this journey. And now let's get into the sewing.
So for this project, you're going to need your fabric and matching thread. You'll need some 3mm elastic and of course some scissors. You're also going to want something to draw on your fabric with, so a fabric washable pencil or pen and a straight edge, either a ruler or just a piece of cardboard or something, and of course a rotary cutter if you have one. Now we're going to get our fabric out and we're going to measure a rectangle that is 3.5 inches tall by 21 inches wide. Now my ruler is not that long, so I'm just going to mark out my corners and get it as far as I can, and then just pop it over to get to that 21 mark. And that same goes for the 3.5 width, as my ruler is only 3 inches wide. And then because I'm not going to be just going on every side of my ruler, I like to measure down from the top line 3.5 inches so that I'm getting a nice even rectangle all the way around and all of the lines are going to be parallel. Now once that is done, we're going to cut it out either with your scissors or your rotary cutter. So just try to keep all those edges nice and straight. Obviously you could use the edge of your ruler if you wanted, but this time I'm just going to be winging it. So get all of those edges cut off and trimmed. And then we've got our nice rectangular piece here. And make sure that both your sides are nice and even and everything matches up. And then we're going to just do a quick iron and get all those creases out. Once you've got that done, then we're just going to fold it in half lengthwise and do a crease down the center. Now this isn't a super necessary step, but it does really help you keep track of the center of your rectangle as you're sewing. Next we're going to flatten out our rectangle, and then we're going to bring the two shorter ends of the rectangle together. We're actually going to be sewing a straight stitch right across those, joining those two pieces with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. So you can see now I've just sewn the top, and now I'm going to be pressing open the seam. Now this just keeps the bulk down. The fabric can get a little bit bulky if you push all the fabric to one side or the other. Now you can see that I've kept that little line on the top on. Now that's going to be our wrong side of the fabric, and we're going to use that as a guide when we're sewing. Now here's the tricky part. So what you're going to do is you're going to fold two of the ends into the center, and then you're going to fold it again on top of itself. Then you're going to fold it again. Now remember, you want the wrong side facing out, and you're going to be starting to sew along that top edge again, 3/4 inch 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. And once you get to the end, you're going to pull the center of the little burrito out. Now I'm just pinching it with my fingers there to show you what the stitching will do. So as you pull it out, you'll then refold the pieces back onto each other and then continue sewing. It looks a little bit more complicated than it actually is. Once you've got it, it totally makes sense. So bear with me. And it might even be a good idea to just pop back into this section of the video when you're actually sewing, and you can sort of get a visual of what you're going to be doing. Now I'm going to be sewing starting right in the middle of that previous seam, and I'm going to bring my needle down and make sure that all of those edges are lined up. And remember, you should only be sewing through 2 pieces of fabric. Now I would say 2.5 is about good, depending on your sewing machine. So of course you want to do a little bit of a back stitch to start and then just go for it. Now you can see I've gone far enough and I'm pulling out my fabric and then readjusting everything, getting the other pieces back inside of the little burrito and pulling those two outer pieces together so that I can continue my straight stitch. And again, this is going to be 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. And once you're to the end, you just want to leave about 1.5 inches space. Now that's what that line was for on the fabric. That showed our wrong side, and also it's a great guide to remind you when you're almost done and where you're going to stop sewing. And do a little back stitch right at the end, and you are good to go. Just remember to trim those threads nice and close, and now we have our funny little burrito, and we're going to be turning it inside out. So just pull those threads and clip them out of the way and start the process of turning inside out your scrunchie. This is when it all makes sense. Now on to the final major step. We're going to do a quick press. Now this will just help your scrunchie look nice and tidy once you string in those elastics. Now for the elastic, I like to use 3mm elastic, and I like to use 2 pieces of it. I don't have an exact measurement. I wear my scrunchies around my wrist, so I usually measure around my wrist, and then I give myself an extra inch for the tails of the elastic. So I measured my wrist at just over 7 inches, and so I'm going to be cutting just over 8 inches. Now, because I want 2 of these pieces, I'm actually going to fold the elastic back on itself so that I can use that folded edge to string my safety pin through. So now I have an approximately 16.5 inch piece of elastic. I'm going to be stringing my little safety pin through the end there, and I'll be using that to pull it through my scrunchie. Now, this is not a terribly complicated process, but the one thing that you do have to remember is to just hold on to those tail ends so that you don't lose them inside your scrunchie, because that is a pain to try and fish out, and an even bigger pain to have to restring the whole thing once you've already finished it. And can I just say, I love watching speeded up sewing videos. It's really satisfying. Now, once you have those pieces through the end, you're going to take off your safety pin, and then you're just going to clip that looped end. Now the next tricky part is just figuring out which ends to tie together, but you can figure this out by pulling one of the pieces and seeing which end on the other side reacts. And then tie those 2 pieces together, and then you're going to tie your next 2 pieces together. I like to do just a simple double knot for each of them, and that way one of them isn't trying to slide through while you're wearing your scrunchie. And now you have what appears to be a scrunchie. And now the final step is just to sew up the hole that you pulled the scrunchie through on itself. And for that, I'm just using some matching thread and a needle, and I'm just going to be using a simple ladder stitch. If you've never done a ladder stitch before, I suggest going and looking up a YouTube video about it, as I'm not going to go into too much detail on here. Basically, you're just picking up pieces from one side and then the other side of the fabric, and it makes kind of a little ladder which you can then pull nice and tightly together. And once you're done, you can do a nice little knot at the end. I just find looping the thread around the needle 3 times and then pulling that taut against the fabric works really well. And then I usually thread the needle back through inside whatever I'm sewing, be it a stuffed animal or a scrunchie. And then once that's through, I clip off the thread so that the tail of the thread is inside the project instead of outside. And your scrunchie is complete. Good job. I hope you enjoyed your scrunchie, and I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the comment section below, and I will try to get back to you on that as soon as I can. A final note is that you can make scrunchies out of just about any fabric. You can use stretchy fabric, cottons, linens, anything you have in your stash. I made that little mini one with a slightly smaller rectangle for my daughter, and she loves it. And I used some scrap indigo fabric, and I even repurposed a stretchy little skirt to make that little maroon colored one.
I hope that this tutorial has helped you confidently learn how to make a scrunchie, and I hope that you'll join me on future sewing projects here on Common Thread. And now, I'm gonna go clean my house.